Chapter 21 Disturbance at the Training Grounds. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 21 Disturbance at the Training Grounds. Northern Spiritual Academy, Training Ground. Many students were sweating as if it had rained. A loud and clear cry, mixed with vitality, spread out far away. Mu Chen was sitting under the shades of a tree. He lazily leaned on the trunk as he stared idly at the various heated duels. It was obvious that these duels did not interest him. "Oi, although you have excellent results right now, you shouldn't be so sloppy, right?" A slender figure suddenly blocked Mu Chen's view. Then, Tang Qianer's voice playfully rang out. Mu Chen stared at the slim waistline in front of him. Then, he slowly moved his eyes up. The girl's apricot color dress, slightly lifted up soft chest and slender figure made her quite attractive. As he looked at the girl's beautiful face, Mu Chen did a stretch and said, "It's not that I'm acting sloppy, but these duels are useless to me." In the spiritual road, he did not know how many times he experienced battles of life and death. At that location, nobody was able to use any spiritual energy, thus they must push their minds to the limit and use their wisdom. Just a little bit of negligence and the cruel fate of being disqualified would occur. Then, they would only be able to wait at the safety zone until the trial was over. And compared to that place, the gentle duels between students in the Northern Spiritual Academy would have no effects on Mu Chen. "Humph, you only know how to boast." Tang Qianer hummed softly. Yet her beautiful eyes could not help but look at the comforting face of his. There was a gentle smiling intent in his black eyes as well as a sense of calmness deep inside that not many people possess at his age. It made others slightly immersed in them. Tang Qianer also sat down beside Mu Chen. She then stretched out her slender hands and unlocked her ponytail. Her bluish-black hair suddenly poured down like a waterfall. The scene was so touching and it instantly attracted a lot of attention over. Envious looks were thrown to Mu Chen in the end. This person really is great to have such a treatment. "That's right, how did your training in the Limitless Death Seal go? There weren't any problems, right?" Tang Qianer tilted her head and she asked with her eyebrow lifted. Mu Chen smiled. He extended his palm over towards Tang Qianer. In his palm, a looming black seal slowly came out while emitting a cold chill. "You succeeded." Tang Qianer gently opened her mouth as she made a shocked expression. She could not help but immediately grabbed onto Mu Chen's hand and stared at the black seal on his palm. Her fingers poked at the black seal. A cold chill penetrated through it and made her body shiver. It can only be considered as succeeding the first step. But it must be continuously nurtured by my spiritual energy. Mu Chen shook his head and he moved his gaze. He noticed that a lot of eyes were heating up in the surrounding and immediately let out a soft cough. He said, "You'll pull in a lot of hatred for me if you continue to do this." Only then did Tang Qianer recover, her face instantly turned red and she quickly let go of Mu Chen's hand. Not that far away, Luo Tong stared at this scene. His eyes were a bit sulky. Tang Qianer was the East Branch's flower. He naturally liked her as well. Moreover, Tang Qianer's father was also one of the Northern Spiritual Realm's territory lord. His father had once mentioned that if he was able to obtain Tang Qianer's love, then their strength would increase tremendously after the Luo territory and Tang territory teamed up. This idea was definitely good, but Luo Tong did not manage to obtain this girl's heart like his father had wished for. Instead, Tang Qianer treated him quite cold. This made him extremely frustrated. And now, he saw how close Mu Chen and Tang Qianer were and he was naturally jealous. "Brother Luo, that guy really is insolent." Jiang Li and Ting Yong stood beside Luo Tong and jealously stared at Mu Chen as they spoke. Although they were unhappy seeing this scene, they knew that Mu Chen wasn't that easy to deal with. Therefore, they did not act arrogantly as they would usually and pick a quarrel with him. He is only just a newbie that recently entered the heaven class. Yet he dares put on airs in front of me. Luo Tong's eyes were dark and his eyes immediately turned around. He stared at Tan Qingshan, who was sweating like mad as he trained nearby, and let out cold smile. Jiangli, go find Tan Qingshan and have a duel with him. Remember, you must take good care of the newbies. Jiangli was startled for a moment. He hesitated and said, that Tan Qingshan has a good relationship with Mu Chen. If I were to cause trouble for Tan Qingshan, then Mu Chen would probably. I'm here, what are you afraid of? Luo Tong frowned as he asked. When Jiangli noticed the dissatisfaction within Luo Tong, he did not dare to say anything more. He immediately got up and walked quickly towards Tan Qingshan. Tan Qingshan, who was in the middle of his training, noticed that Jiangli was coming for him. He frowned for a bit, but he did not say anything as he was not very talkative. He continued to practice a fist technique. Tan Qingshan, I'll have a duel with you for a bit. This way, you will be able to improve much faster. As an old hand, I should take care of you newbies. Jiangli said as he directed a malicious smile towards Tan Qingshan. After the surrounding students witnessed this, they immediately understood what Jiangli wanted to do. However, nobody dared to say anything because of Luo Tong's dark gaze coming from nearby. This kind of duel was definitely quite normal. These guys are really going too far. When Tang Qian'er saw this scene, she immediately frowned. She tried to get up, but her wrist was pulled by Mu Chen. What is it? Tang Qian'er looked at Mu Chen suspiciously. It was obvious that Luo Tong and the others troubled Tan Qingshan in order to allow Mu Chen to see it. It could be regarded as a deliberate show of strength as a warning. Although Tan Qingshan is silent, he has a stubborn personality. Sometimes, he does not need any help. Do not underestimate a man's pride. Mu Chen said faintly. The act of old hands bullying newcomers would appear everywhere. If I were to come forward and help him, it might allow him to be less troubled. However, this isn't something that he needs. Moreover, in extreme situations, he might even drift apart from me. So in order to avoid this kind of trouble, he must use his own abilities to tell the others that he isn't someone that everybody can just bully. But he isn't Jiang Li's opponent. Tang Qian'er said. Victory isn't just about beating down the other. Mu Chen smiled slightly and said. As long as he is able to let the others know that he isn't a pushover and that they would have to pay some sort of price in order to push him around, it is fine. Tang Qian'er thought for a moment. She felt that there were some truths within Mu Chen's words. However, she still hesitated and said. Humph, even though you're younger than me by a year, why did you pretend to be so old? Mu Chen smiled. He looked at Tan Qingshan whose face color changed. The latter clenched and loosened his hands in a cycle. He seemed to struggle for a bit before he stared towards Mu Chen. Mu Chen gave a smile to Tan Qingshan and gently nodded. Seeing Mu Chen smile, Tan Qingshan gripped his hands tightly. Fierceness appeared within his eyes and he coldly said. Then, Senior Jiangli, please advise me. Jiangli was startled when he saw that Tan Qingshan actually accepted and immediately let out a sneer. He really is a boy who had no idea of his own limitations. The two individuals slowly retreated backwards and many students surrounded them. However, it was obvious that many of them felt that Tan Qingshan was really unlucky this time. Under the crowd's gaze, the duel instantly began. It was just like everyone had expected. This duel was simply one-sided as their strength was at different levels. However, everybody's sympathy gradually changed shortly after. Because they saw Tan Qingshan continue to charge at Jiangli without the slightest fear of death. Even when he was repeatedly kicked down by Jiangli, he did not show any signs of surrendering. The crazy imposing manner coming from his red eyes even shocked Jiangli. Bang bang bang. The two figures interweaved at the grounds. Although Tan Qingshan was quite helpless, He risked being hit by Jiang Li a few times in order to bite at him. When Jiang Li blew away Tan Qingshan again with his fist, the latter continued to pounce forward and bit into his arm. It left a bloodstain. Jiang Li finally could not stand the mad wolf-like imposing manner and retreated a few steps. He shouted out, "You're crazy." Tan Qingshan ignored it and he pounced forward again with his red eyes. "I quit." Jiang Li hurriedly escaped. He screamed out loud as he stared at Tan Qingshan's red eyes. The surrounding students rushed forward and pulled at Tan Qingshan. However, the latter was overly crazy right now and they failed to stop him for a moment. This scene made many students tremble. This Tan Qingshan was truly crazy. Under the surrounding students' shouts, Tan Qingshan gradually calmed down. He had cracked lips, his entire body was filled with pain and a bruise was even on his face. However, his eyes were filled with excitement. In front of him, Jiang Li's clothes were also ripped a lot. Although he did not have any injuries, his filthy face and the horror in it were visible to everyone. Tan Qingshan might have lost in strength, but he won in terms of imposing manner. This was enough to make the other heaven class students look at him with new eyes. Tan Qingshan wiped the blood from his mouth and looked towards Mu Chen. The latter smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Amazing. Tan Qingshan rubbed his head and smiled. He felt gratitude towards Mu Chen as he had given him a chance to win back his pride with his own efforts. In the future, there aren't many old hands that would probably come to bully him. That guy has quite a crazy nature. Tang Qianer also smiled. Tan Qingshan's craziness earlier even made her slightly alarmed. Mu Chen smiled as he nodded his head. Then, he stood up. "What are you doing?" Tang Qianer asked suspiciously. Tan Qingshan did what he was supposed to do. "Next, it's my turn. Others tried to show their strength as a warning, so I must pay them back. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome." Mu Chen smiled and he gripped his right hand tightly. "Also, I wanted to find a person to test how powerful the Limitless Death Seal is." Mu Chen slowly walked forward. Then under many people's gazes, he entered the grounds and stared at the gloomy Luo Tong. "Senior Luo Tong, I recently learned a spiritual art and I wanted to invite Senior over to give me some guidance. I hope that you would advise me as well." Chapter 22 Might of the Death Seal. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 22 Might of the Death Seal. When Mu Chen's voice rang out in the training ground, the lively atmosphere suddenly quieted down. Then, countless astonished eyes remained fixed on him. Who would have imagined that Mu Chen would actually take the initiative to fight with Luo Tong? Could it be that he did not know that the latter was always finding an opportunity to trouble him? Why would he go on his own and charge at him now? "Qianer, what is Mu Chen doing? That Luo Tong isn't that easy to deal with." Mo Ling went up to Tang Qianer and asked with a serious expression as he stared at Mu Chen's back. Tang Qianer shook her head. Although her eyes showed a bit of worry, she did not reveal it. She only let out a shallow laugh and said, "It's fine, he knows what he is doing." Mo Ling could only give a bitter smile as he nodded. This duel followed the rules. Even if he wanted to speak out and help him, he could not step in. He can only hope that Mu Chen had a bit of skill. Otherwise, Luo Tong probably would not let go of this opportunity of tormenting him. Ho ho! While being surrounded in many gazes from nearby, Luo Tong was stunned. His originally overcast face slowly turned cold. From his mouth, a cold laugh slowly escaped his lips. "Looks like you believe that you've gotten used to the place after staying at the heaven class for the past few days. So you can finally begin to act arrogant." Luo Tong stood up, his eyes were coldly fixed on Mu Chen. "What are you saying? I simply want to have a little duel with you." Mu Chen chuckled with a gentle smile as he spoke. "Also, isn't it something natural for a senior to have a little duel with newcomers? That's what Jiang Li said earlier. Over at the side, Jiang Li's facial color changed unnaturally after he heard Mu Chen mentioning him. However, he deliberately pretended to be fierce as he glared at Mu Chen. In his heart, he wondered why this guy would dare to cause trouble for Luo Tong. Could it be that he didn't know that Luo Tong had the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase? Luo Tong stared at Mu Chen's handsome face, which wore a gentle smile. In his heart, however, he was extremely furious. That smile seemed like it was mocking him, but he also coldly grinned, and said, "Since you have that desire, then as your senior I should agree to it, might as well. After saying those 3 words, the coldness in Luo Tong's eyes was undisguised. From the surface of his body, a tyrannical fluctuation was emitted as spiritual energy slowly entwined and escaped from his body. The students nearby spectating, all quickly moved back a bit as if they were afraid that they would be caught in it. Mu Chen extended his fists. Please, Luo Tong did not hold back at all. As the color of his face darkened, he released his spiritual energy without reservation. He took a step forward and shot forward like an arrow. Accompanied with the sound of an explosion, his fist blasted outwards and it relentlessly charged towards Mu Chen. When the spectators saw how ferocious Luo Tong was, they were shocked. How was this a little duel? Luo Tong obviously had the intention to beat up Mu Chen. Mu Chen looked at the quickly approaching Luo Tong. However, he did not have any intention of fleeing or hiding, a dark black spiritual energy wrapped around his fist. He then took on a stance to take the blow head-on and collided directly against Luo Tong. He wanted to get a good grasp on the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase. A low sound reverberated out as their fists collided heavily. Both parties' spiritual energy smashed against each other and formed energy waves. It instantly caused strong whirls of air to appear around them. The energy waves swept across the area and the 2 figures were both shaken. Mu Chen trembled and was pushed back a number of steps. On the other hand, Luo Tong was only pushed back 1 step. It was evident that Luo Tong had the upper hand in a direct confrontation. Regardless of how impressive your spiritual energy is, there will still be this difference in level when facing against me. Even if I suppress you, I can suppress you to death. Luo Tong's eyes were cold. He was in the spiritual movement stage late phase while Mu Chen was only in the middle phase. Although it might seem like a small difference, the difference was enough to oppress the other. Didn't your father tell you to just swallow your pride and behave if you don't have the capability? Since you've taken the initiative to come, you're bound to lose face. After hearing this, Mu Chen gently laughed as he said, "While I was learning how to endure, you were still in school being a good little boy. And the reason why I need to endure is because I met someone I couldn't beat at that point of time. But how regretful, in my eyes, you don't amount to much. Then let me tell you, what kind of price you will need to pay today." A hint of dreariness appeared in Luo Tong's eyes. He extended 2 fingers, forming it into a blade as a dark green energy violently surged out. At his fingertips, a sword blade seemed to appear and disappear as it emitted out a sharp fluctuation. Great Luo's sword technique. Upon seeing the glowing green sword tip emerging from Luo Tong's fingers, their expression changed and they shouted in shock. The Luo territory's Great Luo's sword technique. Mu Chen's gaze swept past the glowing green blade. Spiritual tier low rank, Great Luo's sword technique. This is the technique that made the Luo territory's territory lord famous. He never imagined that Luo Tong would have trained in it. However, judging from its appearance, it wasn't up to standard yet. However, it was already a very impressive feat to execute it at the spiritual movement stage. Swoosh! Luo Tong didn't give Mu Chen any time to think. He had a cold gaze as his body charged forward. His fingers were like a long sword. As his fingers cut through the air, he violently stabbed towards Mu Chen. Wherever the blade passed, the air seemed as if it was torn apart. Mu Chen's eyes were focused solely at sword tip coming from the violent stab. This sharpness was enough to give someone goosebumps. He slowly clenched his right hand. A dark black spiritual energy circulated through his body. It was infused endlessly into the center of Mu Chen's right palm. The looming black seal in his palm gradually emerged at this moment. A cold fluctuation poured out. A dark black light fiercely emitted out from Mu Chen's palm. At this moment, Mu Chen seemed to be holding a black sun. The cold fluctuation coming from it made others alarmed. Mu Chen stamped with his foot and his figure leaped forward like a leopard. He chose not to dodge and met directly against Luo Tong's fierce and aggressive move. The spectators were all dumbfounded when they saw this scene. "Go to hell!" Luo Tong shouted out gravely. The glowing green sword did not slow down as it streaked forward like a lightning towards Mu Chen's throat. The fist which contained a dense black light was also thrusted forward at the same time. A black light, which was like a sun, directly collided against the glowing green sword tip. Violent spiritual energy fluctuations exploded out. It felt as if the ground quivered as well. However, the eyes of the students remained fixated at the place where the green sword tip collided with the black light. Break! Mu Chen's eyes flashed a cold light. Within his aura, spiritual energy was being poured out without restraint. The black seal also violently trembled in the center of the palm. It actually appeared in front of his fist and landed heavily onto the glowing green sword tip. Gotcha! The black seal blasted out, causing the glowing green sword tip to pause for a moment. Then, everybody heard a slight breaking sound. Soon after that, they widened their eyes as cracks appeared on the glowing green sword tip. In the end, the glowing green sword tip shattered completely. A hint of horror appeared within Luo Tong's eyes as his body shot back helplessly. Mu Chen did not follow up with an attack. The black seal vanished as he flipped his palm. Moreover, the fluctuations also gradually dissipated. However, the spectators didn't make a single sound. They stared in astonishment at the slender figure. It was obvious the unthinkable had just happened. Mu Chen not only blocked Luo Tong's greatest skill, he even managed to force him to pull back. How could this be? Jiang Li and Ting Yong were stunned as watched this scene happen. Luo Tong, who was a spiritual movement stage late phase, actually lost to Mu Chen, who was only a spiritual movement stage middle phase. This. As Mo Ling witnessed this scene, his heart was flustered. Tang Qianer let out a breath of relief and she relaxed her slender hand. This guy is truly impressive. Senior Luo Tong, thank you. Mu Chen cupped his hands at Luo Tong as he chuckled. However, his eyes were fixed on his own palm. The black seal has faded quite a bit. If it's just based on power, this limitless death seal would not be at the level of a common tier high rank. It might only be a common tier because the requirement on having a certain degree of domineering spiritual energy was too high. However, the consumption of spiritual energy was enormous for the limitless death seal. The earlier attack had consumed half of his Auracea's spiritual energy. Although it was his first time controlling it, so it was not perfect, even a spiritual tier low-rank spiritual arts can't compare to its consumption. Luo Tong's face turned pale. He didn't think that the results would end up like this, so he couldn't speak for a few moments. Mu Chen's earlier aggressive attack shocked him greatly. In that instant, he felt a great danger. This guy actually had such a powerful spiritual art. Did his father prepare this for him? Luo Tong gritted his teeth as he thought. He had practiced this great Luo's sword technique for a very long time before it came to fruition. Yet, he still lost to Mu Chen. Just how many tricks did he have? Mu Chen did not care about Luo Tong, who was reading too much in it. He achieved his goal of frightening Luo Tong. This guy will probably restrain himself in the future. Therefore, he clapped his hands and turned away to leave. Mu Chen, come with me for a bit. As he turned away, a faint voice suddenly appeared from nearby. He was slightly shocked and he saw Teacher Mo standing not so far away from him as he tilted his head over. Mu Chen was stunned. He exchanged gazes with Tang Qian'er for a moment. Under the watch of many students, he hesitated for a moment before following Teacher Mo. Upon nearing a quiet forest, Teacher Mo stopped walking. Then, he turned his body and narrowed his eyes. His voice gradually became more severe and he said, "You've trained in the Limitless Death Seal." Chapter 23 The True Power of the Limitless Death Seal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You've trained in the Limitless Death Seal. Mu Chen stared at the serious expression on Teacher Mo's face. He could not help but let out a hollow laugh. Then, he nodded his head. With the latter's spirit stage strength, it was obvious that he could not hide it from him. "You shouldn't have the right to train in it yet," Teacher Mo said in a deep voice. Mu Chen blinked, but he did not speak. He had already trained in it already. Could it be that he'll make him return it back? Teacher Mo stared at Mu Chen's face. His serious expression faltered for a moment. It seems that this boy did not care about his authority. He could only shake his head helplessly and say, "Can you not be this reckless? I only wanted to try it out. If there are any problems, I will immediately stop training in it. I care about my life more than anyone else." Mu Chen smiled and replied. Teacher Mo could only stare at him sourly. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Did you succeed?" "I succeeded in its initial step." Mu Chen stretched out his hand. In the center of his palm, a black seal appeared vaguely. Teacher Mo stared at the black seal in Mu Chen's hand. The corner of his lips twitched slightly. Although he was aware of it earlier, his heart could not help but tremble when he saw that Mu Chen was able to successfully train in this limitless death seal in such a short period of time. This talent, as expected from the person who obtained the qualifications for the spiritual road. "Are you interested in this limitless death seal?" Teacher Mo glanced at Mu Chen. Ever since he brought Mu Chen to the spiritual arts room heaven level, he discovered that Mu Chen took a fancy to this spiritual art. "I could feel that this spiritual art isn't that simple." Mu Chen thought for a moment before he spoke. Although this spiritual art may only seem to be a common tier high rank, he could faintly feel that something was a bit off with it. "Oh." Teacher Mo lifted an eyebrow and stared at Mu Chen. "It feels that this limitless death seal seems to carry a great potential. The training on the surface seems to be the initial step that I feel that there should be some sort of method to make this limitless death seal even stronger." Mu Chen muttered to himself. Teacher Mo slightly narrowed his eyes. A trace of surprise surged through his eyes. Mu Chen stared at Teacher Mo and suddenly let out a smile. He said with a cunning voice, "Teacher Mo should be quite familiar with the limitless death seal, right? From what I can tell, you seem to be quite interested in it." Teacher Mo glanced at Mu Chen, who was like a sly fox. He helplessly nodded his head and said, "I, too, have trained in this limitless death seal." As he said this, he extended out his palm. In the center of his palm, a black seal also appeared on it. However, the one that came from Teacher Mo was a lot more completely and darker than the black seal at the center of Mu Chen's hand. The cold chill fluctuation also far surpassed the one that Mu Chen formed. Mu Chen stared at the black seal in Teacher Mo's hand in shock. He gently smiled as he said, "It really is just like I expected. This spiritual art really isn't that simple. Otherwise, why would Teacher Mo select it? Teacher Mo is a genuine powerhouse at the spirit stage level. He is ranked high up in the northern spiritual realm. If the limitless death seal was only just an ordinary common tier spiritual art, he would not go train in it." "You rascal." Teacher Mo gave off a bitter laugh. "This boy is quite slippery." He thought for a moment and slowly said, Do you want to know how to let the limitless death seal reveal its true power? Mu Chen's eyes lit up. He nodded his head heavily. It's simple. Teacher Mo chuckled and he extended his left hand over as well. Then, Mu Chen was astonished as he noticed that there was exactly the same black seal at the center of Teacher Mo's left palm. So with the limitless death seal, you could form more than one death seals. Mu Chen's eyes glowed. A touch of excitement suddenly appeared on his face. He stared heatedly at Teacher Mo and murmured. The reason why there weren't any other steps for training the limitless death seal isn't because there weren't any. It is because the amazing point of the death seal is that you could form multiple death seals. By overlapping the death seals, you will be able to reveal its true power. Teacher Mo nodded and said. However, the limitless death seal has a harsh requirement for spiritual energy. I have tried my best, yet I was only able to form 2 seals. As for the death seals, the more you have, the more terrifying the backlash from the impact would be. I had once attempted to form the 3rd death seal, but I was nearly gravely injured by its shock. After that, I did not dare to try it again. Mu Chen also had the same feeling. When he formed the 1st death seal, he went through great lengths just to withstand the impact coming from the formation of the seal. He really did not know if he could endure the 2nd seal being formed. Right now, you have successfully formed the 1st death seal, do not rush to condense the 2nd seal. Just so an accident wouldn't occur. Teacher Mo warned him. Mu Chen nodded. Although he longed for the true power of the limitless death seal, he also understood there were no benefits for being too ambitious. Seeing this, Teacher Mo did not say anything more and waved his hand. Mu Chen immediately turned and left. The moment he turned his head around, he saw Tang Qianair waiting for him. Are you all right? Did Teacher Mo do anything to you? Tang Qianair immediately asked these questions when she saw Mu Chen coming out. After all, Mu Chen did break the rules a bit when he learned the limitless death seal. Therefore, she was worried that he would be punished. Mu Chen smiled as he shook his head. Then, he lowered his head and looked at the black seal in his palm. His heart heated up. This limitless death seal was truly extraordinary. It looks like he would have to put more effort into it in the future. In the middle of the night, Mu Chen was quietly sitting cross-legged. His hands were changing seals again. A trace of dark black spiritual energy circulated at the tips of his fingers. Gotcha. However, when the dark black spiritual energy weaved together and attempted to form a seal, the spiritual energy suddenly went out of control and the fluctuation dissipated away. Mu Chen stared at his empty palm. He shook his head helplessly. Just earlier, he attempted to see if he could form the 2nd seal, but the results were obvious. He failed. It seems that the difficulty for the 2nd death seal was much harder than the 1st one. Looks like I can only slowly do this. Mu Chen muttered to himself. Then, he recovered his mind and closed his eyes. He began to circulate the great pagoda art and absorbed the spiritual aura from the world. In the end, the spiritual aura turned into dark black spiritual energy and entered his aura sea. In addition to this, Mu Chen would also separate a bit of his spiritual energy and let it flow down the meridians in his arm in order to nurture the black death seal. It made the color of the black seal become deeper. Because of the fight with Luo Tong yesterday at the training grounds, Mu Chen's reputation also spread out within the East Branch Heaven class. The veteran students did not dare underestimate this newbie, who just rose up. Also, Tan Qingshan made others understand that he wasn't a seemingly quiet boy, who would be pushed around, with his fierce attitude yesterday. Therefore, nobody came to trouble him in the days after. Mu Chen had truly obtained peace and quiet. During this peaceful time, Mu Chen began to focus his efforts into cultivation. He would be at the cultivation field to borrow the 3rd-rank spirit convergence array at daytime. The spiritual energy within his aura sea became denser and denser as the days passed. When it was nighttime, he would nurture the limitless death seal on his palm. He also gradually attempted to form the second death seal. But without any exception, he failed. But despite the repeated failures, Mu Chen did not give up. He could vaguely feel that he was getting more proficient in the seal method for forming the limitless death seal through the repeated failures. His control at the limitless death seal became more and more smoothly. The feeling of him getting closer and closer to success made Mu Chen experience a little bit of joy. The time quietly went on, and in a blink of an eye, approximately half a month passed. During this half a month, the spiritual energy inside Mu Chen's aura sea became denser and denser. Although he had not advanced to the spiritual movement stage late phase, it was definitely more powerful than half a month ago. While his spiritual energy progressed, Mu Chen's training in the limitless death seal also became more proficient. His control over the first death seal reached a certain degree of precision. It was not like when he was facing against Luo Tong and would cause unnecessary consumption. As for the condensation of the second death seal, Mu Chen could faintly feel that he had reached it. However, his spiritual energy wasn't enough, so he was not able to condense it successfully. This made him feel a bit regretful. In the cultivation field, when Mu Chen heard that the bell ringing, which represented that the class was over, he opened his eyes and began to feel the spiritual energy surging in his aura sea. He smiled gently and stretched. "Hey!" A sweet voice came from beside him. Mu Chen tilted his head. He only noticed Tang Qian'er smiling as she stared at him with anticipation. "What is it?" Mu Chen asked. "We will be heading for training at the Northern Spiritual Field tomorrow." Tang Qian'er smiled as she said. "We're heading out tomorrow." Mu Chen paused for a moment before he smiled and nodded his head. He was completely immersed in his training during this time, so he nearly forgot about the time. However, it was still fine. Seeing that he could not form the second death seal because he did not have enough spiritual energy, if he was able to find some elixirs in the Northern Spiritual Field, it would solve his pressing problem. You have to work harder during this time's Northern Spiritual Field training. It is said that the West Branch's Lu Mubai will also participate. The one that formed a team with him is the West Branch's Hong Ling. We can't lose to them. Tang Qian'er said seriously. Lu Mubai, huh? Mu Chen let out a slight smile. That person is the genuine #1 in the Northern Spiritual Academy. And are they going to confront each other for the first time during this Northern Spiritual Field training? How interesting. Mu Chen's black eyes shined. He was not afraid of anyone in the spiritual road, and it was exactly the same in the Northern Spiritual Realm. Chapter 24. Promise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 24. Promise. The Northern Spiritual Field is located at the northwestern side of the Northern Spiritual Realm. It is approximately a day away from the Northern Spiritual Academy. This vast territory could be considered as the most popular place within the Northern Spiritual Realm. Although the Northern Spiritual Field is filled with many dangers, the higher the risk, the higher the rewards. To obtain these rewards, many individuals would let their successors take their position before entering the Northern Spiritual Field. Some individuals would be able to obtain the rewards, but some would be buried under the rotten leaves. Heading towards the Northern Spiritual Field for training was considered a rather significant event in the Northern Spiritual Academy. Almost half of the Heaven class students would participate. As they would quietly train inside the academy, they knew that they needed real combat the most. And only real combat would toughen a person's mind. This is an essential thing required on the path of becoming strong. Not only was the Northern Spiritual Field filled with a variety of spiritual beasts, there were also a diverse group of disreputable individuals, including some notorious characters. Compared to the bloody and ruthless characters, the Northern Spiritual Academy's students were like a sheep. Even though they weren't weak, but they would not be a decent opponent for these ruthless individuals if a fight really happened. Therefore, the Northern Spiritual Academy also sent out a powerful guard force in order to protect the students. The East Branch's teacher Mo and the West Branch's teacher She would also follow. These two individuals were genuine powerhouses at the spirit stage. There shouldn't be many souls that would dare harbor evil intentions in front of two spirit stage powerhouses. In the early morning, the Northern Spiritual Academy's field training team began to leave. However, they only reached the outskirts of the Northern Spiritual Field when it was sunset. Since it was getting darker, they set up their camp when they got there. As the darkness enveloped the place, a campfire rose from the camp. It was evident that many of the Northern Spiritual Academy's students would not come to such a place. Thus, many of them were excited and a lively atmosphere surrounded the camp. This lively atmosphere made others stare at them in the darkness. A majority of them were adventurers and they knew that these individuals were hot-headed individuals from the Northern Spiritual Academy. They only pouted in the darkness as they walked away. In their eyes, these student goody point two shoes would probably be trembling in fear when they face a vicious spiritual beast. Mu Chen sat cross-legged beside the campfire. He stared at the darkness outside of the camp. In the far distance, there were a variety of bloody roars echoing from beasts. This scene was somewhat familiar to him. But only the atmosphere was much less brutal and bloody compared to his memories of the spiritual road. Mu Chen trembled for a moment. Then, a slender hand suddenly extended from behind and patted his shoulder. When the hand landed on Mu Chen's shoulder, his black eyes instantly turned cold. His entire body tensed up like a jaguar coming in for its prey. His hand shot out and clenched the hand tightly. Ouch! A cry of pain rang out. Only then did Mu Chen recover and he turned around to look at Tang Qianer, who was behind him. The coldness within his eyes quickly disappeared as he touched his head awkwardly and let go of the hand. What are you doing? It hurts. Tang Qianer angrily complained at Mu Chen as she sat down beside him and rubbed her wrist. Sorry. Mu Chen let out a bitter laugh. The 1-year trial in the spiritual road made his body remain alert instinctively. This vigilant instinct was always suppressed by him when he returned to the northern spiritual realm. However, he returned back to a familiar environment again, so he actually awakened this vigilance again. What is it? Tang Qianer pouted, but her eyes remained fixed on Mu Chen. After all, girls are always quite attentive. She felt a cold chill when Mu Chen gripped her wrist earlier. If she did not let out a sound of pain, Mu Chen might have directly crushed her wrist. Mu Chen stared at the campfire in front of him and was silent for a moment. He said, "If someone did the same action as you earlier in the spiritual road to me, perhaps I would have killed him. Because if I don't kill him, I might be the one that will be killed." Tang Qianer froze for a moment and she stared at the calm boy. When he said the word kill, his face did not change much. It was as if he was accustomed to it. Then the spiritual road seems to be quite terrifying. Tang Qianer muttered. In their eyes, the spiritual road was quite mysterious. It is said that many individuals who left the spiritual road would not talk about that matter. However, the people that came out of the spiritual road were all extremely powerful. Thus, it made many young boys and girls like Tang Qianer to yearn for that place. However, as naive individuals, they did not know that they must walk out from this insane place to obtain an abnormal strength. Mu Chen gently smiled and muttered to himself. At that place, everybody is considered a competitor. They are all extremely cruel competitors as well. There are a few crazy individuals, who would smile peacefully towards you, yet they would plunge a dagger into your chest in the next moment. Therefore, trust is something rare at that place. However, if you are able to find it, it will be something that you will cherish for the rest of your life. Mu Chen quietly breathed out. His face looked gentle as he recalled the girl with silver hair. She was a crazy person that even he felt troubled about. During the half a year when she chased him, Mu Chen fought with her 3 times. He won twice, but for the last time, the girl reversed the situation in a black long sword, which was like a ghost in the night sky, stopped at his throat. It was obvious that she won that time completely. She only needed to gently stab at him and he would have remained in the spiritual road forever. However, she did not stab at him. In the darkness, her glass-like eyes stared at him for a long time. Then, she slowly retracted her sword and said in a low voice, "I won't kill you. You should come with me." At that moment, Mu Chen was stunned for a while. Then, he asked the question he wanted to know since 6 months ago. "Why did you chase after me for so long? If I didn't save you, you would have died a long time ago." When he first met her, she was caught in a dangerous situation. 5 cunning crazy individuals wanted to kill her. Originally, Mu Chen did not plan on helping her, but maybe because those individuals were annoying or perhaps it was the sadness that appeared in her glass-like eyes, he gave in. He saved her, yet he also got into trouble with the 5 of them. For a week after that, Mu Chen brought the injured her as they escaped. However, Mu Chen gradually defeated the 5 troublesome individuals in the following 10 days after that. He killed 3 of them and the remaining 2 gave up. But just when he finally got rid of the 5 troublesome individuals, he could not relax at all. The girl, who had never spoken a single word to him, pulled out her sword and pursued him for half a year. When the girl heard Mu Chen's question, she seemed to ponder for a moment. Then, she hesitated before he heard the answer, which nearly made Mu Chen puke out blood. "I don't want to have a good opinion of you. I only wanted to focus on my training. If I have a favorable opinion of you, I will be distracted. You're crazy." At that moment, Mu Chen could not endure it and blurted out these words. "Then, what are you doing now?" Mu Chen powerlessly asked. "I planned on killing you before, but it feels like I can't do it." The girl considered this seriously. Faint moonlight illuminated the beautiful face that would eventually cause a disaster. She frowned and said, "It feels that I still have a favorable opinion of you after these 6 months." Mu Chen wordlessly stared at the sky. They had hunted each other for half a year now, yet you actually say that you have a favorable opinion of me. I did not kill you just now, so you owe me your life. Therefore, you will form a team with me. I'll kill you when I don't have a favorable opinion of you. Are you trying to raise a dog? If I don't kill you by then, I'll let you go." Mu Chen shook his head helplessly. He turned around and said, "I'm not interested. I can protect you from all the backstabs. As long as you do not harm me, I will protect you whether it is in the spiritual road or in the great thousand world." The girl hesitated for a moment before she gently said towards Mu Chen, who turned around. Mu Chen's footsteps stopped. The girl's gentle voice seemed to penetrate the space and directly hit his heart. It made his eyes become warmer. "You usually do not speak, yet I never thought that it would be so touching when you do." Mu Chen turned around and smiled. He let out a sigh and he stretched out a hand towards her as he walked over. "Then, let's cooperate happily." The girl's face, which always remained calm and emotionless, suddenly let out a faint smile. At that moment, her beauty actually made the moonlight lusterless. Afterwards, she stretched out her cold hand and gently shook Mu Chen's hand. "This is my promise to you. BDNV. Chapter 25 Spiritual Beasts Soul Essence. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 25 Spiritual Beasts Soul Essence. The warm firelight from the rising campfire illuminated Tang Qian'er's body. However, she still felt quite chilly. This chill came from Mu Chen's description of the spiritual road that she had once longed to enter. "It seems that the spiritual road isn't a wonderful place, it's lucky that I didn't go. Otherwise, not even my bones would remain." Tang Qian'er's heart beat irregularly as she spoke. She did not imagine just how anxious she would be if she had to survive in a place where she could not trust anyone. It wasn't a nice place from the start. Mu Chen smiled and lifted his head. He noticed that Teacher Emo was waving to everyone and many students turned their gaze over. For this time's Northern Spiritual Field training, this place will be our camp. All of you will head out tomorrow from this place and venture into the Northern Spiritual Field for training, where you will confront directly against spiritual beasts. Before this happens, I would like to remind you that the spiritual beasts are divided into 3 ranks: high, middle, low. Most of the ones at the outskirts of the Northern Spiritual Field will be low-rank spiritual beasts. However, you will still need to team up in order to deal with it. Teacher Mo looked around as his calm voice echoed throughout the camp. Every single student was listening carefully. They knew that this isn't a mock battle, but a true fight. A single mistake would cause them to become food for spiritual beasts. The low-rank spiritual beasts are approximately at the strength of a spiritual movement stage, the middle-rank spiritual beasts are spiritual rotation stage, the high-rank spiritual beasts are comparable to the spirit stage. In the depths of the Northern Spiritual Field, high-rank spiritual beasts exist. Therefore, you should definitely not enter depths of the Northern Spiritual Field. When Teacher Mo said to this point, his voice had already become quite severe. Even he would find it a hassle to deal with the high-rank spiritual beasts in the depths of the Northern Spiritual Field. These students that just came out from the academy would be like a defenseless sheep. Everybody nodded their heads. They weren't foolish enough to joke around with their own lives. Not to mention a high-rank spiritual beasts, they would run far away if they encounter a middle-rank spiritual beast. At the end of this training, each member of the top 3 teams would be able to obtain an accumulation elixir. Teacher Mo relaxed his expression slightly. He stared at the boys and girls, whose eyes lit up, and smiled as he said, "So, in order to obtain an excellent result, you should work together with your companion. With your strength right now, you must cooperate in order to survive in the outskirts of the Northern Spiritual Field." "Yes." The students replied in unison. After you hunted down the spiritual beasts, you should remember to collect the soul essence. Although the low-rank spiritual beast's soul essence isn't something that a spirit stage powerhouse would ingest, it will be used to evaluate your performance. Mu Chen nodded his head slightly. A spirit stage powerhouse has the ability to ingest spiritual beast's soul essence. With their strength, they naturally wouldn't take a fancy to a common spiritual beast. Teacher Mo, you are also a spirit stage powerhouse, what beast spirit did you ingest? A few students asked in curiosity. They were quite interested in the special ability of ingesting a beast spirit that a spirit stage possesses. When Teacher Mo heard these words, he hesitated a bit. Then, he immediately formed a seal with one hand and a powerful spiritual energy erupted from his body. The golden light condensed behind him and it actually formed into a giant golden wolf that cried into the sky. On the surface of the giant wolf's body, a lightning pattern seemed to be there. It seemed very powerful and extraordinary. Wow! Surprised sounds erupted from the camp. Even the West Branch students that were located at the other side of the camp turned their gaze over. They were slightly shocked by the giant golden wolf behind Teacher Mo. Teacher Shi, who was also explaining the rules to the West Branch, noticed this and pouted his lips. His body shook and a mighty spiritual energy exploded out. Behind him, a black lion figure appeared. On the back of the lion, a gray turtle shell was there. All of the students looked at the spiritual beast soul essence that the spirit stage powerhouses ingested and summoned. They were envious. This power was something that they wanted. I ingested the high-rank spiritual beast Golden Thunderwolf's soul essence. The Golden Thunderwolf is ranked in the Myriad Beast record. However, it is not ranked up high. It is only at the 382th place of the Earth ranking. Teacher Shi ingested the high-rank spiritual beast Rock Turtle Lion's soul essence. It is ranked at the 390th place of the Earth ranking. Teacher Mo smiled when he saw Teacher Shi's action. Afterwards, he waved his hand and the golden wolf vanished from behind him. It's such an amazing spiritual beast, yet it is only ranked somewhere in the 300s of the Myriad Beast Records Earth ranking. Then won't the top 100 Earth-rank spiritual beast be even more insane? There is also the legendary heaven ranking for the myriad beast record. Wouldn't it be too overpowered? A few students exclaimed. Just the Earth ranking was this amazing, just how terrifying would the heaven ranking for the myriad beast record be? The spiritual beasts that are able to enter the top 100 in the myriad beast record's Earth ranking are not any ordinary spiritual beast. Their strength surpasses a spirit stage powerhouse greatly and are comparable to a powerhouse at the level of 3 heaven stage. Therefore, they are known as heaven-rank spiritual beasts, in short heavenly beasts. After he said to this point, Teacher Mo suddenly glanced at Mu Chen. Mu Chen understood what he meant. This is because Mu Chen's father ingested the dragonfire bird, which was ranked in the top 100 of the Earth ranking. Thus, the dragonfire bird should have achieved the heaven rank. Normally speaking, it should be quite difficult for a spirit stage powerhouse to ingest the soul essence of a spiritual beast that is stronger than them. For Mu Feng to be able to ingest it, he must have been quite lucky. Mu Feng's strength is definitely in the top 3 even among the 9 territory lords within Northern Spiritual Realm because of this. After reaching spirit stage, the strongest attacking method is ultimately the spiritual beast's soul essence that they ingested. It is considered a powerful fighting force. Therefore, it was natural that their strength will be stronger if they ingested a stronger spiritual beast. As for the existences in the myriad beast records heaven ranking, Teacher Mo paused for a moment and immediately smiled. Even the powerful individuals at the sovereign stage in the Great Thousand World wouldn't dare to easily attack them. Okay, it's about time now. You should all rest earlier today. The Northern Spiritual Fields training will officially begin tomorrow morning. Teacher Mo felt that he said enough. He waved his hand to stop the excited youths. When everybody heard these words, they dispersed as they carry a bit of excitement back with them. Mu Chen also returned to his tent and closed his eyes to train. He, once again, tried to see if he could condense the second limitless death seal. A peaceful night passed by. The following morning. When morning arrived, many students were already prepared at the camp. They stared excitedly at the inside of the vast forest. Mu Chen was together with Tang Qianer. He swept his eyes around and noticed Tan Qingshan nearby. Mo Ling was actually next to him. It seems that the two of them have formed a team. This surprised Mu Chen a bit. After all, Mo Ling had the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase. If he wanted to find someone to team up with, there are many people more suitable than Tan Qingshan. Mu Chen, you formed a team with Qianer. Oh, I formed a team with Qingshan. Since he is a newcomer, it would be a bit risky to come here. I thought that I should take care of him a bit. Mo Ling said as he noticed Mu Chen and he brought Tan Qingshan over. Mu Chen smiled slightly and nodded his head. From Mo Ling's words, he could tell that he wanted to form a good relationship with him. It seems that the majority of the reason why Mo Ling wanted to take care of Tan Qingshan was because he wanted to form a good relationship with him. Senior Mo Ling sure is thoughtful. Mu Chen smiled. He did not have any ill feelings towards Mo Ling. Therefore, he did not object in forming a relationship with him. They talked and laughed for a while. Then, their voices suddenly stopped. From their right, a group of individuals suddenly separated and a few familiar figures appeared in front of Mu Chen. The one that led the group was Lu Yang, who lost to Mu Chen at the academy competition. Lu Yang stared at Mu Chen. His eyes were a bit cold. The battle during the academy competition had impacted his reputation quite a bit. Although his big brother was Lu Mubai, he was secretly scoffed at when he entered the heaven class. Thus, his heart was still filled with rage. Mu Chen only took a glance at Lu Yang before he tilted his head away to the one beside him. There, a tall and burly boy was staring at him in interest. You are that Mu Chen? I heard that your reputation isn't that small recently. The boy in yellow clothes smiled as he stared at Mu Chen and spoke in a careless manner. Chen Tong, what do you want? When Mo Ling saw these two boys, he lifted an eyebrow and asked in a deep voice. Mu Chen's face remained calm. Chen Tong. This name was quite well known in the Northern Spiritual Academy. Although he could not compare to Lu Mubai, he is still ranked third overall in the Northern Spiritual Academy. He is at the spiritual movement stage late phase and is like Mo Ling, an important individual that the Northern Spiritual Academy focuses on nurturing. Before, you were always the one that tries to make a show of authority. Why do you have to bring someone over now before daring to come over? Mu Chen glanced at Lu Yang and he smiled as he spoke. Oh, you're quite arrogant. Let us introduce ourselves. I am the West Branch's Chen Tong. I wanted to meet the only one who qualified for the spiritual road, a long time ago. Chen Tong held out his hand and chuckled. Let's go. Mu Chen let out a slight smile. He was too lazy to care about these two individuals. He passed straight through Chen Tong's side. Then, he stopped his footsteps and stared into the distance. At that location, Lu Mubai, who was wearing white clothes and looked exceptionally handsome, was staring over to this side. The two of them exchanged glances. A faint chill seemed to flow in the air and it made the surrounding students quietly close their mouth. If you dislike me, then come at me by yourself. These people are not up to my standard. Mu Chen gently laughed. He did not stay at that place longer and brought Tang Qianer out of the camp. They moved quickly towards the northern spiritual field. Lu Mubai narrowed his eyes slightly as he stared at Mu Chen. A cold light flashed through his eyes. That bastard. Lu Yang gritted his teeth as he spoke. Chen Tong let out a grin, but his eyes were quite dark. It's fine. We'll let him show off for now. There's always a chance of meeting in the northern spiritual field. At that time, nobody will be watching, so I'll teach him what manners are. He really is a boy, who doesn't respect his seniors. Chapter 26 Veteran Hunter. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 26, Veteran Hunter. The West Branch people sure are annoying. Inside the forest filled with shade, Tang Qianer had an angry expression on her face. These people keep coming to trouble Mu Chen, so even a clay figurine would be angry within its heart. Only a mediocre individual will not be hit by jealousy. Mu Chen only chuckled. He looked far behind him and said. However, that Lu Mubai seems to be quite jealous of me. I don't think I've interacted with him a lot. Lu Mubai. Tang Qianer frowned and said. He wants to deal with you. Or why would you think that Lu Yang, a newcomer who recently ascended the heaven class, would bring Chen Tong over? This was probably incited by Lu Mubai. That guy he is quite similar to the crazy individuals in the spiritual road, but he only lacks a bit of attainment. Mu Chen said in a faint voice. That guy is also really annoying. Tang Qianer's face turned slightly cold, but she instantly became worried. It isn't that easy to deal with Lu Mubai. Lu Yang isn't the same level as him. Ever since he entered the Northern Spiritual Academy, Lu Mubai had always dominated the title of the strongest within the Northern Spiritual Academy. It seems that he had never lost during these years. Ah, right. Mu Chen, you should be careful about that Lu Mubai. I can't seem to see through that guy. Although I fought against him before, I still lost badly. Even then, Lu Mubai did not use his full strength. Mo Ling said solemnly beside him. Senior Mo Ling, you are already at the spiritual movement stage late phase, if Lu Mubai was able to defeat you. Tan Qing Shan was astonished and he could not resist blurting out these words. Mo Ling slowly nodded his head and said. It is likely that Lu Mubai has already advanced into the spiritual rotation stage. That guy is indeed powerful. Tang Qianer's face became serious. If this was true, then it would definitely be troublesome. The gap between spiritual movement stage and spiritual rotation stage was too great. When she thought up to this point, she stared at Mu Chen. The boy's face was still as calm as before and he had a gentle smile. That wordless silence and calmness suddenly weakened the worries within Tang Qian'er, Mo Ling and Tan Qingshan's heart. The boy in front of them seemed to have some sort of magic power. It made others believe that he could do many extraordinary things in the eyes of ordinary people. Although the spiritual rotation stage is amazing, it isn't an existence that could not be dealt with. It might be troublesome, but if Lu Mubai was to take action, he will have to pay a certain price. Mu Chen gently said. There was no vaunting within his words. Only, it did not matter whether it was in the spiritual road or the great thousand world. If anyone has any ideas towards him, he would definitely make them pay the price regardless of the outcome. Forget it. Let's not talk about this right now. The Northern Spiritual Field training has begun. We should also officially start now. The two of you are considered our competitors. Mu Chen looked at Mo Ling and Tan Qingshan as he smiled. Then we should take the advantage by striking first. Mo Ling and Tan Qingshan exchanged gazes with each other and fiercely stomped the ground as they dashed forward. They were currently at the outermost area of the Northern Spiritual Field. Here, the spiritual beasts were quite scarce. Only by venturing in further will they be able to meet them. Mu Chen stared as the two of them departed. He could not endure letting out a laugh. Then, he gently rubbed his palms and a tiny bit of excitement appeared in his black eyes. It's been a long time since he hunted others. If he did not move now, he was afraid that he would become rusty. Let's go as well. Mu Chen directed a wave towards Tang Qian'er and his pace suddenly accelerated. However, he did not follow Mo Ling's route and instead, went on a slightly different route. During the trial within the spiritual road, he understood how to track the spiritual beasts' trails. The two of them sped up. Within 10 minutes, they gradually entered the outskirts of the Northern Spiritual Field. Sounds of roars would occasionally came from a distance. Tang Qian'er followed closely behind Mu Chen. The girl's pretty face was slightly nervous. She knew that they would lose their life if they were surrounded by spiritual beasts in this kind of dangerous place. And just when she was nervously staring at her surroundings, Mu Chen's body suddenly stopped. She smashed straight onto him without any guard up. The girl's soft and delicate body pressed onto Mu Chen's back. This soft feeling made Mu Chen blink. Behind him, Tang Qian'er blushed and quickly tried to step back. However, her hand was caught by Mu Chen. Before Tang Qian'er needlessly struggled, Mu Chen had already waved his hand slightly. His eyes pierced through the forest and stared straight ahead. Tang Qian'er also followed that gaze and she saw a patch of open space. She noticed that there were two blood-red bodies with a black horn on its forehead. These two creatures were similar to a tiger and a pig. It leisurely strolled around while emitting piercing endlessly. It's the low-rank spiritual beast Bloodswine Tiger. Mu Chen said softly. These two Bloodswine Tiger seems to be at the strength of a spiritual movement stage middle phase. However, this beast has a thick skin so it should be able to endure an all-out attack from a spiritual movement stage late phase. If it were to enter in a frenzy, it would be exceptionally fierce. One for each person, is that okay? Mu Chen looked at Tang Qian'er. The girl's pretty face was slightly pale, but she still managed to nod her head. This was probably the first time that she was going to face a spiritual beast head-on. Don't worry. I'm here. Mu Chen smiled as he comforted her. Yes. Tang Qian'er gently gritted her teeth and her slender hand gripped onto a short sword. She did not want to drag down Mu Chen. She must work hard for their results. Let's go. Mu Chen gently said as his body rushed out. Roar. When Mu Chen appeared, the two Bloodswine Tiger turned their red eyes over towards him. They let out a roar and a bloody light emitted from their body. Bang! With quaking steps, one of the blood swine tiger charged violently like a streak of red light towards Mu Chen. When the other one planned on following it, a sharp, shattered rock wrapped in spiritual energy hit its nose heavily. This made it falter and its blood-red eyes stared at the delicate girl. It let out a roar and charged over. Mu Chen stared at the blood swine tiger that was charging towards him. His eyes did not panic and, instead, a hint of excitement flashed through. He stomped and actually charged straight at it. A human and a beast skimmed by each other. The fierce winds raised the leaves on the ground. The instant that the two of them were about to collide, Mu Chen's body suddenly took a diagonal step. His right hand gripped onto a sharp dagger and dark black spiritual energy quickly wrapped around it. Mu Chen's right hand drew an arc. The black light appeared right as the blood swine tiger passed by and a cold light flashed through the blood swine tiger's eyes as it sputtered out blood. The blood swine tiger crashed severely at the large tree behind him. The giant tree toppled down and the ground shook. The blood swine tiger seemed to cry out in berserk. Its pair of blood-red eyes was stabbed by Mu Chen and it became blind. Roar! The pain almost made the blood swine tiger become crazy. It used the smell in the air in order to switch directions and charge recklessly at Mu Chen. The mane that covered its body was like barbed wire as it stood up. It was like a steel fortress. However, Mu Chen seemed to be quite calm as he faced the berserk blood swine tiger. He took a step that allowed the blood swine tiger to charge recklessly by his side. Every time the blood swine tiger rushed past his body, the razor-sharp dagger would bring fresh and hot blood. The hot blood slowly rolled down the dagger. In the end, the blood swine tiger let out a shrill howl and its body stopped moving. Mu Chen drew the dagger calmly and cut the enormous blood swine tiger apart. That experienced approach would shock even the adventurers, who hunted spiritual beasts for a living. It wasn't something that a boy at this age should possess. After he dealt with the blood swine tiger, Mu Chen looked towards Tang Qianer. At this moment, the girl was in a slightly difficult position. Although there were many blood trails on the blood swine tiger's body, it was basically uninjured for a blood swine tiger with thick skin. Roar! Just at this moment, the blood swine tiger that was entangled by Tang Qianer might have heard the cries of its dying companion. Its blood-red eyes instantly flushed red and its originally huge body actually swelled up. It went in a frenzy. Mu Chen saw this and lifted his eyebrow. Ah! Tang Qianer issued out a surprised cry. When the short sword cut onto the blood swine tiger's body, an impact shocked her instead and the sword flew away. She immediately retreated a few steps and felt a shadow covering her. A smell of blood charged towards her. The blood swine tiger jumped up high into the sky and firmly squashed down like a little mountain. Facing the shadow coming down, Tang Qianer's face became pale and her body felt as if it couldn't move. Shwa! A figure suddenly appeared from the side. Its arm wrapped around her slender waist and a dark black spiritual energy expanded through the dagger in his hand. Like a dark light, it cut across the belly of the blood swine tiger from below. Smash! Fresh blood fell down. However, this also includes smelly intestines and internal organs. Mu Chen held on to Tang Qianer as they rolled on the ground in order to avoid the heavy press from the blood swine tiger. The blood swine tiger struggled for a moment, before it stopped moving. It was obvious that it has lost its life. Phew! When Mu Chen noticed that they successfully got rid of the two blood swine tiger, he let out a light breath out. Then, he felt the girl's struggles within his arm and he released her as he smiled. He said, "Are you all right?" Tang Qianer shook her head as her face was flushed red. She looked at the two dead blood swine tiger and amazement appeared within her beautiful eyes. She understood that it was basically all Mu Chen's credit for taking out these two dead blood swine tiger this swiftly. "Why are you so amazing? I fought against the blood swine tiger for so long, yet I failed to kill it. Tang Qian'er could not help saying this out. It's best to directly aim at its vital parts. You'll get used to it after you kill a few more. Mu Chen smiled before he went up to the two bloodswine tiger. His dagger cut across its head and a red light flew out. Two fist-size clumps of light slowly ascended. Inside the clump of light, you could vaguely see a miniature bloodswine tiger and a faint violent spiritual energy fluctuation emitted from it. This is the spiritual beast's soul essence. Mu Chen recovered the two spiritual beasts' soul essence and threw it towards Tang Qian'er. The latter caught it in curiosity. She looked at it back and forth as if she was quite satisfied with their first reward in their life. Mu Chen could not help but laugh as he witnessed this scene. He wiped off the blood from his dagger and stared further into the deeper areas. His tongue licked his lips gently. It seems that the earlier bloody events reawakened his suppressed desire. Let's go. This is only the beginning. Mu Chen tilted his head as he spoke to Tang Qian'er. Then, he took large strides again. This level of spiritual beast still lacks a bit of challenge. Chapter 27 Plunder. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 27 Plunder. In the forest covered with leaves, the ground suddenly trembled. A violent cry spread outwards. When looking in the direction of the cry, a giant yellow bear, which was roughly a few meters tall, was currently swinging its hammer-like palms around. It recklessly smacked at the petite body in front of it in anger. Facing against the slap from the giant bear, the petite body retreated backwards. Spiritual energy wrapped around the short sword in her hand. Like a snake bursting out a hole, a red blood trace appeared across the giant bear's white fur. The pain coming from its chest made the giant bear a little mad. The giant palm was filled with yellow spiritual energy. Every time the slap comes down, it would leave deep imprints on the ground. If a single slap were to hit the petite body, it would definitely be enough to cause a severe injury. Fortunately, the petite body was extremely agile. It constantly dodged and the dagger would leave bloodstains in front of the bear's chest whenever the bear slipped up. The large and small figures continued to fight with each other. After approximately 10 minutes, the giant bear finally could not endure this kind of fight and its enormous body crashed down to the ground like a boulder. The beautiful girl finally saw that the bear could not endure it and died. She also let out a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat on her forehead with her hand. She turned her head away while panting heavily. Under a nearby tree, a boy with a long body smiled as he looked at this scene. Not bad. Mu Chen walked forward and stared at the mountain bear's body. Then, he pointed at the white mark filled with bloodstains and said. However, your attacks are still not decisive enough. That is your weakness. As long as you find a flaw, you should completely kill it. The method you used earlier wasted too much effort. If the mountain bear was slightly stronger, perhaps it would be able to mentally exhaust you. Tang Qian'er glanced at the location where another mountain bear was killed. However, there was only a single bloody hole at the white mark on the mountain bear's chest. The location of the bloody hole was extremely precise. It directly pierced through the mountain bear's heart and it was obvious that the mountain bear died in one attack. This mountain bear was the results of Mu Chen's battle. Tang Qian'er previously saw the sharp blow. It was fierce, accurate and without any hesitation. The calmness and horrifying Mu Chen showed when he killed was many times more natural than her. You're an insane person, how could I compare with you? Tang Qian'er pouted her lips. Although she had never really killed any spiritual beasts, she could still feel that Mu Chen's actions weren't any inferior to the adventurers, who would always be muddled in between life and death. How could she compare to him? However, she still had a bit of admiration in her heart even when she said that. Under Mu Chen's guidance, she had begun to get rid of the initial fear that she felt along the way. She even had the ability to kill a low-rank spiritual beast at the spiritual movement stage middle phase by herself. As for Mu Chen, his handsome face had maintained a quiet and gentle smile. This was enough to frighten her. In his eyes, it was an insignificant act. Tang Qian'er's gaze wandered around and she stared at the boy, who was retrieving the mountain bear's soul essence. A shattered point of light landed on his body. His profile had a serious expression and possesses an quality that ordinary youths would not possess. This made her blush slightly. Today's rewards aren't that bad. Up until now, we have already collected 8 low-rank spiritual beasts' soul essences. Mu Chen collected the mountain bear's soul essence and stood up as he directed a smile towards Tang Qian'er. When she heard this excellent result, Tang Qian'er's face was also smiling. She was quite satisfied with the harvest today. Let's go. We should continue. The result is only a trivial matter, we should take advantage of this opportunity to improve ourselves. Mu smiled. But just when he was about to venture in deeper, he suddenly frowned and stared off to the right. What is it? Seeing this, Tang Qian'er asked. There was a movement over there. Let's go check it out. Mu Chen thought for a moment before he beckoned his hand towards Tang Qian'er. His pace accelerated and he headed in that direction. When Tang Qian'er noticed this, she hurried and followed. In the dense forest, dozens of Northern Spiritual Academy students were grouped up together. At this moment, they were looking in front with a pale expression. At that location, there were a dozen figures leaning lazily at the tree trunk. The gazes that stared at the students had a bit of ridicule within them. Although the behavior of the figures seemed quite lazy, they still gave off a highly trained feeling. Their eyes were bright and sharp. A bloody smell even emitted from their body. It was actually an adventurer's team. What are you trying to do? In front of the Northern Spiritual Academy students, there were a few familiar figures there. Mo Ling, Tan Qingshan, Jiang Li and Ting Yong were all there. However, the color of their faces was the same as the other Northern Spiritual Academy students. They furiously stared in fear at the adventurers in front of them. After all, they were still young youths. They would feel fear from the fierce spiritual beasts, and the adventurers in front of them are all individuals whose blade would often taste blood. The viciousness that they would occasionally reveal was enough to make them shudder. You are all a group of brats that haven't grown any hair yet. A young man dressed in leather armor smiled as he stared at the Northern Spiritual Academy students. He said lazily. Didn't I say it earlier? Hand over the soul essences that you possess. You want to rob us? A boy roared out in anger. That's correct. The young man laughed. Sounds of laughter appeared from his comrades behind him. It seems that they treated this as some sort of entertainment. We are students from the Northern Spiritual Academy. Our 2 teachers are here and they possess spirit stage strength. A student tried to use Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi and attempted to shock the adventurer team in front of them. I know that you are students from the Northern Spiritual Academy, you came here for training, right? Then didn't your teacher tell you that being robbed is also a type of training? The young man curled his lips and said. As long as we do not kill you, your teachers won't care about it. So, hand them over. Don't make me take action since I am quite brutal. The young man grinned and his white beast-like teeth made others feel a chill. You. Mo Ling could not endure holding back his anger and clenched his hands tightly. You want to take action and test it out. You are also at the level of spiritual movement stage late phase. The same as me. Why don't we see who is more powerful? The young man glanced at Mo Ling, but his smile was slightly bloodthirsty. When Mo Ling noticed the young man's gaze as if he was staring at a prey, he felt a faint chill in his heart. Although they were both at the spiritual movement stage late phase, the latter's imposing manner wasn't something that he could compare with. Also, the comrades behind him weren't any weaker than him. Mo Ling's eyes flashed. In the end, he slowly released his clenched hands. With a painful laugh, he helplessly shook his head towards Tan Qingshan, Jiang Li and the others. Tan Qingshan also sighed. They also knew that they weren't at the same level as the adventurer team in front of them. They could only admit that they were unlucky and lose their wealth in order to avert the trouble in front of them. Now, that's a good child. When the young man noticed that Mo Ling and the others gave up their resistance, he laughed in satisfaction. Yet the corner of his lips was a bit mocking. This is the Northern Spiritual Academy's students. It really is disappointing. What are you doing? Just when Mo Ling and the others were about to toss over the spiritual beast's soul essence that they managed to obtain, a puzzled voice rang out from behind them. They instantly turned their head over and saw Mu Chen and Tang Qian'er watching them nearby. Mu Chen. When Mo Ling and the others saw Mu Chen, they reflexively became joyful. Then, they immediately thought about something and had a gaze that told him to quickly leave. What is it? Mu Chen seemed to ignore their gazes and smiled as he brought Tang Qian'er over. Shoo, so there's another fat prey. The young man smiled at Mu Chen and then his gaze suddenly landed on Tang Qian'er beside him. His eyes instantly lit up and he whistled. He said humorously. And also a beauty. Tang Qian'er glared angrily at the young man, but the lovely angry expression made the young man fell into a trance slightly. When Mo Ling noticed the two of them walking over, he shook his head helplessly. Then, he began to explain the situation. Robbery. You're quite unlucky. When Mu Chen heard this, he could not help but smile as he spoke. Aren't you the same now? Jiang Li and the others rolled back their eyes. How can this guy still laugh in this kind of situation? Oi, the boy over there. Since you also came, you should hand over some of your spiritual beast's soul essences. Then, hand over the beauty. After all, we shouldn't show favoritism. The young man beckoned as he laughed. You want mine as well? Mu Chen frowned as he said. Who told you to be so unlucky and walked over here? You brats sure are stupid. Although you are quite talented, you guys aren't good enough if we were to fight. The young man said helplessly. I only have one spiritual beast's soul essence, I'll give you that. Mu Chen rubbed his head and pulled out a spiritual beast's soul essence from his arms. Then, he walked towards the young man. Are you deaf? I told you to bring that beauty over as well. You're quite an annoying boy. The young man frowned and chattered on endlessly. As he was chattering, Mu Chen had already arrived in front of him. He handed the spiritual beast's soul essence over. The young man stretched out his hand to grab the spiritual beast's soul essence. His other hand seemed to slap towards Mu Chen's head in dissatisfaction. However, before he touched the spiritual beast's soul essence, the boy's black eyes, which originally contained a smile, instantly turned cold. He turned his palm upright and a sharp black light flashed. It created an arc as it fiercely and cunningly slashed across the young man's palm. Fresh blood suddenly splattered out. This scene happened in a split second. Hardly anyone could react to it. A few of the comrades behind the young man stared at the splattering blood in a daze. In front of many stunned gazes, the handsome boy suddenly smiled. Sorry, I suddenly don't feel like giving it to you. Chapter 28 Cooperation. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 28 Cooperation. In the dense forest, the young man stared in a daze at his hands filled with blood. After a moment, pain surged from his palms and he recovered from the shock. His originally smiling face suddenly turned a bit dark. Behind Mu Chen, Mo Ling and the others were dumbfounded as they stared at this scene. They never imagined that Mu Chen would suddenly launch an attack and that he would be so ruthless when he did it. Boy, are you seeking death? The young man's body trembled. His sullen face was a bit grim. Mu Chen glanced at him and said. As an experienced adventurer, you don't understand the principle of, you reap what you sow. You've never seen someone fail miserably at such an easy task. Oh ho ho, damn brat. After hearing that remark, the young man smiled angrily. His companions behind him wanted to come forward, but were stopped by his signal. He casually tore his clothes in order to wrap his bleeding hand as he stared coldly at Mu Chen and said. You should know what will happen next, right? We'll fight. Mu Chen laughed as he spoke. To be honest, I wasn't too angry when you suddenly attacked me. Instead, I admire your courage. If a person doesn't have any guts, he would still be a trash no matter how talented he is. You are different from those kids. The young man stared at Mu Chen and said. I'm Lin Zhong. Although I admire you, that is a different matter. Right now, I'll give you a chance. If you are able to defeat me, you and your comrades can leave. I will not care about that slash you fired at me either. However, if you lose, you'll leave a finger behind as punishment. Of course, you don't have to accept. However, you and your companions would probably suffer pain on their flesh. We won't kill you, but believe me, I have plenty of ways to make you feel so much pain that you'll rather die. Are there any other choices? Mu Chen shrugged and said. What do you think? Lin Zhong sneered. If that's the case, then let's fight. Just when these words exited Mu Chen's mouth, his eyes narrowed and he dashed fiercely forward. Two of his fingers remained straight and a dark black spiritual energy wrapped around his fingertips. It brought out an extremely fierce wind as it violently stabbed towards Lin Zhong's throat. You still want more. However, Lin Zhong wasn't like the Northern Spiritual Academy students, who had little combat experience. Moreover, he had already suffered earlier, so he remained alert against Mu Chen. Therefore, he did not panic when Mu Chen took action. Although he was slightly shocked, he still raised his arm as the spiritual energy surged and protected his throat. Mu Chen's two fingers stabbed into Lin Zhong's arm. However, it was like hitting steel and his fingers felt slightly numbed. Lin Zhong's strength wasn't bad, it was evident that he had reached the limits of the spiritual movement stage. He would be able to reach the spiritual rotation stage if he managed to take one more step. This thought flashed through Mu Chen's mind, but he did not slow down at all. His fingertips immediately retracted and it formed into a fist. The spiritual energy wrapped around his fist and he fiercely smashed towards Lin Zhong's temple. Bang! Lin Zhong also fired out a fist and it collided against Mu Chen's fist. The two fists bombarded each other and a wave of spiritual energy spread out. It blew the leaves on the ground into the air. When the two fists collided, Mu Chen took a few steps backwards due to the impact. However, Lin Zhong also retreated one step. A hint of surprise appeared within his eyes. When they connected with each other, he could feel the overbearing force from the dark black spiritual energy. It seems that the boy in front of him trained in an extraordinary spiritual art. Damn, brat! Lin Zhong let out a cry and darted forward. His dense spiritual energy erupted out and his palms drew an arc through the air as if it was a blade. It relentlessly headed towards Mu Chen's vital points. In the rear, Tang Qianer, Mo Ling and the others saw such a brutal offensive coming from Lin Zhong and were covered with cold sweat. These guys were definitely desperate criminals. However, Mu Chen did not panic while facing against Lin Zhong's fierce attack. He moved slightly and his black eyes stared at the offensive from Lin Zhong. He would occasionally change his fists to palms and made contact with Lin Zhong's fists. But once it touched, he would retreat back and Lin Zhong was not able to do anything to him. Behind Lin Zhong, his companions originally had a playful attitude as they watched the entertainment. However, the color of their faces became more and more serious. They exchanged gazes with each other and were quite surprised. That boy is pretty good. Lin Zhong actually can't do anything to him even when he is only at the spiritual movement stage middle phase. In front of the crowd, a burly man watched as the two individuals fight. His originally unfocused gaze became serious. Shortly after, he muttered slowly. He is quite an amazing boy, he saw through all Lin Zhong's attacks. Every time he attacks, it is the instant when Lin Zhong became exhausted. It seems like he is retreating step by step, but Lin Zhong would probably be the one that is in trouble. What? The adventurers were surprised. This boy could actually see through Lin Zhong's offensive. What kind of vision is that? Lin Zhong isn't like those Academy's kids. Captain, could you have seen wrong? A person asked in surprise. The burly man glanced at them and said. If that boy was also at the spiritual movement stage late phase, none of you will be his opponent. When have the Northern Spiritual Academy students become this amazing? That can't be. A few adventurers said in astonishment. Lin Zhong can't bear it anymore. The burly man let out a faint smile and said. All of them heard this and quickly looked over. They only noticed Lin Zhong's face was a little flushed and a silver light was flashing on his fist. A muffled thunder sound rang out. He is actually going to use Thunderstorm Fist. This is Lin Zhong's trump card. It seems that he was forced back quite ruthlessly. Boy, try receiving this move of mine. Lin Zhong's face reddened and the silver light on his fist became even more dazzling. A violent fluctuation emitted out from it. Mu Chen stared at the silver light on Lin Zhong's fist. His eyes turned slightly cold and he clenched his right hand tightly. Shwa! Lin Zhong's body darted forward like an arrow. He fired off a punch and an air blast swept over. A rumbling thunder sound rang out deeply. Thunderstorm Fist. The violent punch carried an alarming amount of power as it directly headed to Mu Chen. The leaves flew up and it wrapped around Lin Zhong's fist like a tornado. It viciously blasted towards Mu Chen. This astonishing punch made Tang Qian'er and the others nervous. Mu Chen took a deep breath and a dark black light erupted from his palm as well. In the next instant, he took a step forward and fired off a punch wrapped in black light. Limitless Death Seal. The black light condensed at the surface of Mu Chen's fist and turned into a black light seal. It also carried an domineering spiritual energy and it collided head-on against Lin Zhong's fist in front of many surprising eyes. A deep sound resounded throughout the sky. Cracks appeared where they stood as the ground shook. That violent wave of air destroyed the surrounding leaves. The faces of the two figures instantly turned slightly white. When the air blast exploded, the two of them staggered backwards due to the impact and nearly fell down on the ground. In this head-on collision, they weren't able to determine the victor. The surrounding individuals were all stunned. The adventurers were stunned because Lin Zhong's powerful attack was not successful in defeating Mu Chen, while Tang Qian'er and the others were shocked since Mu Chen actually blocked such a fierce attack. Lin Zhong stabilized his body and his face constantly changed as he stared at Mu Chen. It was obvious that he could not accept this result. Behind him, his companions also stepped forward and stared unfriendly at Mu Chen. When Mu Chen saw this, he let out a cold laugh. His two fingers clamped and a fiery red bead appeared between his fingers. An extremely violent fluctuation emitted from it. What? You want to outnumber me now? Lin Zhong's companions also noticed the violent spiritual energy fluctuation coming from between Mu Chen's fingers and their faces changed instantly. Spirit Destruction Bead. They did not dare to take a step further and stared at Mu Chen in surprise. No wonder that boy was not afraid of them, he actually had this item in his hands. From the spiritual energy fluctuations coming from the Spirit Destruction Bead, even a spiritual rotation stage powerhouse would be severely injured by it if they were careless. The surrounding atmosphere instantly became tense. Tang Qian'er, Mo Ling and the others hurried behind Mu Chen and stared at the adventurers cautiously. Stop! A cry suddenly came from behind Lin Zhong and the others. The tall burly man slowly walked forward as he frowned. What are you all doing? You may not be as good as others, but at least you're not last. Are you planning to disgrace the Thunderstorm team's face? A few adventurers smiled embarrassedly. Then, the tall burly man turned towards Mu Chen and said as he smiled. Little brother, you are quite amazing. Let's settle today's matter like this. If we offended any of your companions, we hope that you would forgive us. You're welcome. Mu Chen smiled and his fingers flashed as he pocketed the spirit destruction bead. He could feel that the burly man loosened up when he pocketed the spirit destruction bead. It was obvious that he was somewhat fearful of the spirit destruction bead. Boy, you're quite capable. Lin Zhong's face finally returned back to normal. He stared at Mu Chen and said as he curled his lips. Mu Chen also smiled and said. Since everything is alright now, then we'll say our goodbyes now. After he said this, he was prepared to bring the crowd to leave. These adventurers weren't in the same group as them. It was better for them to leave as soon as possible. Wait a minute. When the burly man saw this, he anxiously took a few steps forward and cried out. Mu Chen stared at him vigilantly. His hands slowly entered his sleeves and prepared to pull out the spirit destruction bead again. He said. Is there something else? The burly man noticed Mu Chen's vigilant eyes and let out a bitter laugh. He hesitated for a moment and said. Little brother, I want to cooperate with you for a bit. I wonder if you are interested. Cooperate. When Mu Chen heard these words, he raised up eyebrows slightly. Chapter 29 Jaded Essence Tree. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 29 Jaded Essence Tree. Cooperate. Mu Chen was slightly shocked as he stared at the burly man in front of him. The latter had an upright face with thick eyebrows and looked a bit rugged. However, the thing that surprised Mu Chen the most was the spiritual energy fluctuation emitting from his body. It was evident that he had already advanced to the spiritual rotation stage. The strength of this adventurer's team was acceptable. Oh ho ho, little brother, I am the captain of the Thunderstorm team, Lei Cheng. The burly man stretched out his hand and said as he smiled. Northern Spiritual Academy's student, Mu Chen. Mu Chen chuckled as he shook hands with him. Then, he retracted his hand without changing expressions. Lei Cheng's hands were quite rough and they were many-blade callous. It seems that this person specializes in blades. I am only an ordinary student in the Northern Spiritual Academy. I probably won't be able to help you out. Let's forget about cooperating. Mu Chen shook his head. Although he did not know the specifics about the cooperation that Lei Cheng was talking about, he knew that these adventurer teams were quite crooked. They had many grudges and it would be troublesome if they suddenly got involved in it. Seeing Mu Chen refuse, Lei Cheng stared at the surroundings and whispered. Little brother Mu Chen, to be honest, I want to cooperate with you because I saw the spirit destruction bead in your hands. We, the Thunderstorm team, were searching in a valley within the northern spiritual field 2 days ago. At that place, we discovered something good. Mu Chen's expression did not change. He did not say a word and only smiled slightly. Seeing this, Lei Cheng knew that this boy wasn't someone simple. A boy should normally have a curious and arrogant attitude. However, Mu Chen did not show the slightest interest when he talked about this. It was clear that he controlled his heart well. In that valley, we discovered a mature, jaded essence tree. Lei Cheng knew that Mu Chen wasn't someone who would act without some incentive. He became silent for a moment before he said softly. Jaded essence tree. Mu Chen's eyes finally flashed slightly. He stared at Lei Cheng and said. It's matured. Did it bear any jaded essence fruit? Jaded essence tree. It is a rare natural treasure. The tree itself did not hold much appeal to humans, but the jaded essence fruit that comes from the jaded essence tree is filled with gentle spiritual energy. It is extremely beneficial to practitioners below the spirit stage. Right now, Mu Chen was trying to form the second limitless death seal. However, his spiritual energy was still too weak. If he doesn't have enough spiritual energy, he must borrow the power of a foreign object to do it. And this jaded essence fruit was the solution to his urgent problem. Although we did not approach it closely, we still observed it for a bit. The jaded essence tree is reasonably mature. Lei Ching nodded his head as he spoke. Is there a spiritual beast protecting it? Mu Chen asked. It is because of those rascals. Lei Ching let out a bitter laugh and said. Inside that valley, there are at least 100 conflagration apes. And the most trouble thing is that there is also a conflagration ape king, which reached the middle rank spiritual beast level. Its strength is approximately at the spiritual rotation stage middle phase. It is even slightly stronger than me. 100 conflagration ape. One conflagration ape king. Mu Chen was startled. Although the conflagration apes were only low-rank spiritual beasts, a few of the matured ones would reach the level of a spiritual movement stage late phase. With such numbers gathered together, it would not be easily to deal with it. And there is even a conflagration ape king. The conflagration ape king's strength isn't the most difficult part to handle, but rather it is the fact that it can command the other conflagration apes. Mu Chen said softly. Although there were a lot of conflagration apes, they were still spiritual beasts without much wisdom. It would be easy to deal with once they were in a state of disunity. However, if they have the commands from the conflagration ape king, it was a different story. The conflagration ape king has already started to have a bit of wisdom. It might not be as cunning as humans yet, but the thunderstorm team would probably be destroyed if it commanded the 100 conflagration apes to assault them together. Lei Ching looked in surprise at Mu Chen. It was obvious that he did not imagine that this seemingly young boy would know as much as them, hunting veterans, about the spiritual beasts. Yes. However, you don't have to worry about this. We have a method that could hypnotize a few of the conflagration ape. The one that we have to deal with is the conflagration ape king. Thus, we hope to have this little brother cooperate with us, and you will use the spirit destruction bead to kill the conflagration ape king when you have the opportunity to do so. Although my spirit destruction bead can gravely injure a middle-rank spiritual beast, it would probably be quite difficult to kill it. Mu Chen pondered for a moment before he spoke. It's fine. As long as you are able to severely injure the conflagration ape king, the chances of us winning will increase significantly. Lei Ching let out a confident smile. After all, he was at the spiritual rotation stage initial phase. He might not be able to defeat a conflagration ape king when it was at its strongest, but if it's gravely injured, he should be able to do so. Since it's like this. Mu Chen smiled slightly. His smile was like a cunning fox, and he said. Then, let's talk about the payment, shall we? You should know, I would have to invest at least a spirit destruction bead in order for the matter to work. The spirit destruction bead's price isn't cheap. Sometimes, you won't be able to obtain it even if you have money. Lei Ching let out a bitter laugh. He did not treat Mu Chen as a boy anymore. Therefore, he did not attempt to deceive him and said. Little brother, make your offer. If it is appropriate, I will naturally accept it. Mu Chen thought for a moment before he said. I want 30% of the jaded essence fruits on the jaded essence tree. This price is quite reasonable. I know that the thunderstorm team would be the main force, so that is why I gave the majority of it to you. You're quite black-hearted. Lei Ching grinned. However, he thought for a moment and still nodded. This price wasn't unacceptable. After all, they would obtain the bulk of it. Then let's do it. I will also need a few companions, is that okay? Mu Chen smiled as he said. Although they only exchanged talks for a while, Lei Ching gave him a pretty good feeling. However, he should always stay on his guard. After all, there weren't much insurance if he went by himself. That's fine. However, you should know the strength of the conflagration ape. If they do not have the ability to protect themselves, it would be troublesome if they went. Lei Ching said. Mu Chen nodded his head. Then, he turned around. Although Tang Qian'er, Mo Ling and the others did not know what Mu Chen and Lei Cheng was discussing about, it seems that they had a friendly atmosphere between them. It was great that they did not fight. Next up, there will be quite a bit of danger. However, it will also bring quite the benefits. I will team up with the Thunderstorm team for a task. If you are interested, you can follow me. The payment will definitely be satisfying. Of course, there are two conditions. First, you must listen to my commands, and second, you must reach the spiritual movement stage middle phase. Is there anyone that wishes to come? Mu Chen stared at Mo Ling and the others and spoke. Mo Ling and the others were stunned. Mu Chen would actually cooperate with these people. I'll go. Tang Qian'er was the first to raise her slender hands and laughed as she spoke. I'll also come with you. Mo Ling thought for a moment. In the end, he still nodded. He was at the level of the spiritual movement stage late phase and he completely met the conditions. He understood Mu Chen's vision. If he said that the rewards would be quite satisfying, then it should be quite excellent. Tan Qingshan was a bit regretful, but it couldn't be helped. His strength was only at the spiritual movement stage initial phase. He would only be a bother if he headed there. Jiang Li and Ting Yong looked at each other. They hesitated for a moment before they gritted their teeth and said, "We'll come as well." Shortly after, another 3 boys with spiritual movement stage middle phase strength also participated. With this, Mu Chen's side had 8 people. This lineup was pretty good. If anything were to occur, there will be room for maneuver. Qing Shan, you should bring the others back to the camp. Also, please inform Teacher Mo that we followed the Thunderstorm team to do a task. There is no need for him to worry. Mu Chen turned over to look at Tan Qingshan again and said with a smile. His voice was quite loud. Therefore, Lei Cheng and his team were able to hear it clearly. This boy is even more experienced than us. When did such a student come out from the Northern Spiritual Academy? Lei Cheng shook his head. Mu Chen's earlier words were obviously said to them. If they dared to do anything to them, then those spirit stage powerhouses wouldn't give them the chance to escape the Northern Spiritual Field. Tan Qingshan nodded. He saw Mu Chen waved and he did not stay at this place any longer. He quickly left together with the other students. We should also leave now. Mu Chen turned around and stared at Lei Cheng as he spoke. Yes, let's go. Lei Cheng nodded. He made a gesture towards the Thunderstorm team and began to lead the way. A group of people quickly dove into the dense forest and vanished swiftly. As they were on their way, Mu Chen told the matter about the Jaded Essence Tree to Tang Qian'er, Mo Ling and the others. When they heard the 3 words, Jaded Essence Fruit, their eyes clearly shined. It was evident that they knew just how beneficial the essence fruit would be to them. It's great that Mu Chen is quite honorable. He did not forget about us for such an excellent matter. Mo Ling said in excitement. Beside him, Jiang Li and Ting Yong's faces were slightly red. Their attitude towards Mu Chen weren't exactly good before. Yet, they owe such a favor to him. Therefore, they felt quite unnatural right now. You think that I brought you here to pick some for free? It is important to listen to my commands then. If something happens, we might lose our lives. Mu Chen gently smiled as he spoke. Relax, we will definitely listen to you. Mo Ling laughed. Even Jiang Li and Ting Yong nodded their heads. When Mu Chen noticed this, he also smiled. Then, he focused on heading there. The group of people crossed through a thick forest. Along the way, they met a few spiritual beasts blocking them. However, these low-rank spiritual beasts were completely wiped out by the Thunderstorm team before Mu Chen and the others could attack them. This smooth and clean method of killing made Mo Ling and the others shocked. They were able to feel the difference between the two sides. They rapidly moved, and after half an hour, the traces of human became exceedingly little. Beast roars would occasionally sound it out. When they got to this place, even the thunderstorm team became cautious. A group of a dozen or so people darted through the forest again. The view in front of them suddenly widened up. A stream followed through the shattered rocks on the ground. At the opposite of that, there was a little valley. Sharp ape cries could be heard from inside the valley. When they saw the valley, Lei Cheng's pace finally stopped. He turned his head around to Mu Chen and nodded. This allows Mu Chen to understand that they have reached their destination. The Jaded Essence Tree is in this valley. Chapter 30 Hunting Apes in Valley. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 30 Hunting Apes in Valley. The valley in front of them was quite narrow. At the entrance of the valley, dense tree branches extended from both sides. Even stones were piled up as if it was trying to conceal this valley. The thunderstorm team must have wasted a lot of effort in order to discover this location. There is quite the amount of conflagration apes inside. Mu Chen stood at a location slightly away from the entrance. He gently sniffed a bit and smelled a thick, foul smell. It was evident that there could only be more conflagration apes than what Lei Cheng had said, but not any less. Let's begin our preparations. Lei Cheng gestured with his hand. Lin Zhong and a few other companions swiftly found some firewood from the surroundings and ignited them as they piled it outside of the valley. All of you should cover your nose and mouth. You should try to hold your breath. Lei Cheng pulled out a couple of gray pills from his arms and a rich fragrance emitted out. It made others feel slightly drowsy when they smelt a bit of it. Beside him, Lin Zhong and the others pulled out torn rags and made them wet in the stream. Then, they distributed them to everyone. Seeing that everybody was ready, Lei Cheng threw the pills into the fire. A rich fragrance instantly spread out. Everybody should utilize our spiritual energy and push this smoke into the valley. Lei Cheng let out a soft cry and was first to take action. His cuffs moved and a powerful spiritual energy burst out. It brought forth a fierce wind and swept the smoke into the valley. Mu Chen and the others also copied him. Fierce winds were created by the spiritual energy and the smoke quickly enshrouded the valley. Sounds of excitement from the apes gradually began to fade. Lei Cheng stared at the valley. After a short moment, he tilted his head to the side as he listened to the movements within the valley. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. He gestured with his hand and said, "Let's go, be careful everyone. Let's go." When they heard these words, everybody nodded their heads in excitement. Then, they directly went through the entrance and charged into the valley. When Mu Chen and the others charged into the valley was already somewhat foggy. When they looked over, they could see many giant red apes lying down on the ground. However, these conflagration apes were almost all in a deep sleep. It was evident that Lei Cheng's hypnotic drug was extremely effective. The Jaded Essence Tree is in the depths of the valley. We should hurry. This drowsiness will not last long. Lei Cheng urged them as his speed accelerated again. He jumped over the conflagration apes and went straight into the depths of the valley. Mu Chen also brought the others and followed. However, when they reached the depths of the valley, a low roar sounded out from the top of the cliff. Then, a bloody howl came down. An enormous conflagration ape pounced towards Tang Qianer, who was behind Mu Chen. This sudden attack shocked Tang Qianer. She hurriedly swung her hand around and the short sword flew out as it was wrapped in spiritual energy. However, this still left a shallow bloodstain on the conflagration ape's body. Although it did not cause much damage to the conflagration ape, the short sword was able to stop it for a moment. At the same time, Mu Chen's feet touched the ground and he charged over like a nimble bunny. His hand gripped onto a sharp dagger that fell down from his sleeves. As the dark black spiritual energy wrapped around the dagger, he swiftly slashed across the conflagration ape's eyes. Fresh blood spattered out and the conflagration ape let out a shrill cry. However, just when the cry came out, the dagger flashed as it stabbed directly into its throat and stopped the cry. The conflagration ape's huge body fell down heavily onto the ground. It crushed the rocks into pieces. At the same time, Mu Chen's body landed on the side. He wiped the blood off his dagger and asked Tang Qianer, who was shaken. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Tang Qianer shook her head. At the side, Mo Ling and the others were completely stunned. It was evident that they have not recovered from the fact that Mu Chen actually killed a conflagration ape this smoothly. Of course, it wasn't only them. Even the people from the Thunderstorm team were startled. This Mu Chen had a quick reaction and attacked effectively. Amazing, this conflagration ape is probably at the level of spiritual movement stage late phase. Lei Qing gave a thumbs up to Mu Chen and smiled as he said. Its speed has dropped due to the smoke. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that easy for me to take care of it. Mu Chen shook his head. Although this conflagration ape was able to endure through the drowsiness from the smoke, it was still affected. The effects of the bewitching drug are limited. A conflagration ape could resist it if it reached the spiritual movement stage late phase. Inside this valley, there are probably no more than 20 conflagration apes with this strength. However, even if they did not fall asleep, they should still have been weakened. It shouldn't be hard to deal with them. Lei Qing nodded. Then, he suddenly lowered his body and stared off into the distance. His expression became serious and said, "Our trouble is that guy over there." Mu Chen's eyes also narrowed as he looked into the distance. At the end of the valley, the smoke has already faded a lot. A giant fiery red figure that was even bigger than a conflagration ape was over there. The giant figure's body was like a fire. Its body glowed as if it was covered by a layer of red armor. Although it was half sitting on the ground, an ominous aura spread out from there. This violent spiritual energy fluctuation far surpasses an ordinary conflagration ape. This was obvious the boss of the valley, the conflagration ape king. Mu Chen felt the oppression of spiritual energy coming from there. His eyes became a bit more serious. At the side, Mo Ling and the others had a hint of fear in their eyes. That is a middle-rank spiritual beast. Mu Chen stared at the conflagration ape king for a moment. Then, he turned and stared at the rear of that giant ape. Near the mountain walls, there was a crack that was approximately 20 feet. A tiny tree approximately 10 feet wide extended out from the crack. The body of this tiny tree seemed like it was made from jade. On this tree, an emerald color was revealed among the green leaves. It was a round fruit. Even from this distance, you would still be able to smell the fragrance that it emits. It was extremely refreshing. It really is the jaded essence tree. Mu Chen stared at the little tree. A hint of joy flashed through his eyes. From the looks of it, the jaded essence tree was obviously mature. It seems that there would be no less than 30 jaded essence fruits. If this cooperation succeeds, it would be quite moving. Little brother, I will lead 5 team members to deal with the conflagration ape king. The other 5 members would deal with the awakened conflagration apes nearby with your companions. When that happens, you should wait for an opportunity to use the spirit destruction bead and try to kill the conflagration ape king in one attack. Lei Qing observed for a moment and said in a low voice. Okay. Mu Chen nodded. He pondered for a moment and said. If something unexpected occurs, I suggest that we should immediately retreat. If you are still greedy for the jaded essence fruit, then I will bring my companions and leave. As for the ruined spirit destruction bead, I'll just consider it my loss. After all, our lives are more important than the jaded essence fruit. When Lei Qing heard these words, he let out a bitter laugh. Then, he nodded. If it really became like that, then it could only be considered as bad luck. Let's prepare. Lei Qing waved his hand. 5 members of the thunderstorm team including Lin Zhong had their spiritual energy rising up. Then, each of them carefully approached the conflagration ape king in the depths of the valley. Although the valley still contained a faint mist, the conflagration ape king was not something that a common conflagration ape could compare. When Lei Cheng and the others was within 100 feet of it, it was aware of them. The blood-red eyes stared at the crowd and viciousness appeared within its eyes. It was clear that it was outraged by the humans that dared to enter its territory. An angry roar spread out from its ferocious jaws. The conflagration ape king extended its long arm and directly picked up a huge boulder. Then, it fiercely threw it over towards Lei Cheng. The sound of the winds breaking showed that it contained a great amount of power. Kill! Lei Cheng cried out and his figure dashed out. He gripped the blood-red machete in a reverse grip as his spiritual energy stormed out. A sharp blade flash came out from the blade and instantly shattered the huge boulder. Lei Cheng's speed did not slow down at all and he charged straight at the conflagration ape king. The rest of the thunderstorm team hurriedly followed. Bang! The instant that the two sides made contact with each other, a fierce battle broke out. Spiritual energy gushed out and flashes of blades headed swiftly towards the conflagration ape king's body. While Lei Cheng and the others were tangled up with the conflagration ape king, Mo Ling and the others followed the other 5 members of the thunderstorm team and blocked the remaining awakened conflagration apes. They did not let them interfere with the battle inside. Mu Chen stood at a place not far away and firmly fixed his eyes at the battle. A fiery red spirit destruction bead was once again held tightly between his fingers and a violent spiritual energy emitted out from it constantly. This spirit destruction bead possesses the power to gravely injure spiritual rotation stage powerhouses. However, there is only one. Therefore, he must seize the best opportunity or this mission would fail if it was wasted. The situation with the conflagration ape king was quite tragic. The 5 members of the thunderstorm team used all their strength and attacked. Although they left many wounds on the conflagration ape king's body, their hands were also covered with blood. It was obvious that they were injured in the backlash. From the looks of it, if Lei Cheng did not directly block the majority of the attacks from the conflagration ape king, they would not be able to approach this big guy's body. Constricting lightning blade. After fighting a while, Lei Cheng also felt that his arms becoming numb and immediately shouted out. Boom! As his cry appeared, Lin Zhong and the others suddenly stepped forward. A lightning flash appeared on their long blades. They used all their strength and fire off slashes. These 5 lightning lights flashed and grazed the conflagration ape king as it hacked onto the back of it. The conflagration ape king's metal dot-like back actually split open through the combined attacks from them. Fresh blood oozed out from its back. The pain coming from its back instantly made the conflagration ape king roar out in fury. Its arm fiercely extended out and a violent spiritual energy engulfed it. Lin Zhong and the others instantly flew backwards while spitting blood. Asshole, go to hell. Lei Cheng took a single step forward and let out a vicious howl. Spiritual energy surged out and a 10 feet long spiritual energy sword light actually appeared from the blade. He slashed angrily towards the conflagration ape king. The conflagration ape king's speed was extremely fast. It felt the ferocious attack coming from Lei Cheng and crossed his arms together like a shield. It blocked the sharp blade forcibly and the sword light cut into its flesh. However, it did not cut its arms apart. Mu Chen. At this moment, Lei Cheng cried out. The moment he cried out, Mu Chen, who was accumulating power for the side, had already darted out. He nimbly appeared behind the conflagration ape king and a dark black spiritual energy wrapped around his fingers. It inserted itself into the wound of the conflagration ape king like a sharp dagger. Fresh blood shot out and Mu Chen instantly retreated. A violent spiritual energy suddenly came out from inside the conflagration ape king's wounds. When the spiritual energy appeared, a gigantic spiritual energy shockwave broke out. The back of the Conflagration Ape King exploded like a bomb. Its flesh scattered and the rocks on the ground were shattered due to the impact. The Conflagration Ape King let out a maddening howl. However, blood continued to flow out of its back. It seems that a hole was blown out. It struggled for a few steps and finally crashed onto the ground. Mu Chen landed on the ground. He was relieved as he stared at the Conflagration Ape King on the ground. We did it. When Lin Zhong and the others witnessed this scene, their eyes were filled with happiness. Even Lei Cheng had a relieved smile on his face. No, something's wrong. However, the instant that they relaxed, Mu Chen's face suddenly changed colors. This is because a red light emitted out from the Conflagration Ape King's body. Be careful. Lei Cheng also noticed this change and instantly tensed up. The red light surrounded the Conflagration Ape King's body and the fresh blood on its back actually stopped flowing out. Afterwards, Lin Zhong and the others were shocked as they noticed the Conflagration Ape King rising up unsteadily and the fiery red hairs on its body actually grew a tiny bit. The Conflagration Ape King roared to the sky. A faint emerald color flashed inside the red lights on its body. This light was the same color as the jaded essence fruit. As the Conflagration Ape King roared, its aura suddenly became many times stronger. Damn it, it actually made a breakthrough at this moment. When Lei Cheng felt the growing aura from the Conflagration Ape King, the color on his face changed. Mu Chen's face also became serious. It seems that this beast had eaten many jaded essence fruit. Now, it is really troubling.